everyone. Welcome. I'm Scout Bloom. I'm going to walk you through the basics of how to set up and play Adopt Me, a cooperative worker placement game where 2 to 5 players work in a shelter to find stray animals good homes.
Let's start with going over the components and how to get set up. To get ready, put the main board in the middle of the play space. Players will also place the initial starting hexes in their spots. Place the track board above the main board. Place the tokens on their respective starting positions. There are 4 decks of cards in the game. Decks include the Events card, which give the group unpredictable events to deal with at the end of rounds, the Home and Pet cards, which all have their own unique special requirements. The front of the Pet card has a picture of a real adopted animal right around the time of adoption, as well as 3 numbers on it, corresponding to the intake, vet care, and exercise or training the animal requires in game play. The back of the card has a full picture of the animal post-adoption. These are turned over when they're put in homes. The last deck is the 7 role cards. Each one is unique and has special talents that break the rules of the game in some way. Players select a role card and take the 3 workers of that color. The pet cards sit to the left of the track board and the home ones on the right. The event cards go above the board. Then 4 starting cards are dealt out from the home and pet cards. The tokens and extra hexes go to the right of the board. These are extra workers, which are used at different times during the game. The stray markers, used at the end of the round. The pet progress dice, which help the players keep track of how well they're getting the animal ready for adoption. And you're ready to play. Here's what the initial setup for a 3-player game looks like. Here's the stray animal area, and these are the spaces for shelter animals and your shelter, which you'll be building up over the game. Adopt Me is a cooperative worker placement game. It uses asymmetric roles on a tile placement board, lots of unique cards, and real pet stories to create engagement and lots of replayability. Players win the game by placing a certain number of animals in homes by the end of the game. This number varies by the number of players. As with many co-op games, players must balance decisions to avoid the many ways to lose. Losing occurs when players don't get to the required total at the end of 10 rounds, the shelter runs out of money or food, or any animal gets a 3rd stray marker. Adopt Me is round-based. There are 2 phases to each round, and 10 rounds per game. First there's a player action phase, and then once all workers are placed, an end of round or cleanup phase. In the player action phase, players work as a group. The game isn't really turn-based, decisions are made together. These are the choices that players have in the first phase of each round. Although there are a lot of choices, basically you're either taking care of the shelter's operation, the first 2, or taking care of animals, the rest. Let's look at how these work. Let's start with the donation action. To donate, just place the number of workers equal to the needed donation on the admin hex. Then move the funding and/or daily care up by that total. Players expand the shelter by placing 3 workers on the admin hex. They then take another hex of their choice to add to the shelter. To intake, place a worker on the intake hex, select a pet from the stray area, and put a pet progress die on the animal card. 1 worker was placed, so the die shows a 1. Some animals need more care before they can come into the shelter. Players foster an animal by placing a worker on intake, placing the animal card under their role card rotated 90 degrees, and placing another worker on the card. To place an animal in a home, the pet card needs to be complete and you need a compatible home. We've completed Harper. She's a 3-month-old friendly lab mix. This home is a couple with a large yard, great for Harper. To place her, put a worker on the admin hex, flip Harper's card over to see Happy Harper, and then put her to the side and move the placement marker up 1. Here are the end of round actions for the second phase of the round. At the end of the round, first gather up all the workers. Then increase the round marker by 1 and decrease the funding and daily care by 1. Place a stray marker on any animal left in the stray area and replenish the home and pet cards. Then reveal and resolve an event card. The end of the game occurs at the end of the 10th round or when players lose the game.
Okay, so after that really quick overview, let's walk through a couple of rounds just to see how the game plays. So the first thing that the players will probably want to do is to focus on enlarging the shelter, since they don't have a lot of the rooms that they need to move the animals through. So let's go ahead and do our first expansion. Now the players can talk amongst themselves about what they want to do. If they decide on an action, one of them can do it, or again, they can all do it together. So they've decided to expand. Each one of them has contributed one. They need to have 3 workers to expand, and they're going to expand with a kennel. Okay, so now the fundraiser, the blue, decides to bring an animal into the shelter because we do now have a kennel available, and they're gonna bring Cisco in. Cisco is a 4-year-old cat. So when they did that, to show that their intake had been completed, they're gonna just put one of the pet progress dies by Cisco's intake number. And now Cisco's intake is complete. So the players can begin doing other things as well, although at the moment they can't because they don't have the vet and they don't have the exercise areas yet. So what the purple player decides to do is to donate to the shelter to move those funding and daily care numbers up 1 each. And they can decide if they want to move 1 or the other up 2, so that can be split. 3 workers left. The admin hex has a 6 worker limit, so they can't do another expansion right now. They can intake again, but right now all they can do is intake another cat because the animals in the kennel have to be of the same species. They need another kennel if they want to bring in dogs. So they're going to do an intake, the blue character, and they are going to bring in Catan, the cat, and put a 1 next to his. Okay, now then what's going to happen is the vet is going to use their special power, and as a vet they can complete medical care for any animal with 1 action once per round, and they don't need the vet hex to do that. So she's going to put her worker over here on the little area that says talent show, and that's just to keep track that she's used that worker. So she's going to take care of Cisco. He just has 1 vet care. And then she is also going to put another meeple on the admin and move that funding track up 1 more. Okay, so that's the end of the first round. The workers will be gathered back at the end of the round, so everybody takes their workers back. Okay, and then the next thing that happens is the round marker gets moved up 1. The funding and daily care go down 1. So we have to put a stray marker onto Daisy and Spud. Now, the thing is, you've got to be really careful because if the funding or the daily care gets down to that end game area, or if any animal gets a 3rd stray marker, then the players lose the game. Now we're going to go ahead and replenish cards. Titus Spartacus, who is a boxer mix, and Scotty, another cat. Okay, and then the last thing you do at the end of the round is to reveal an event card. All right, a local youth group came by to help exercise dogs and play with cats at the shelter. Add 1 pet progress token to all cats and dogs in intake for the exercise area. So what this is telling you is that someone came by to help exercise, so they were very nice. And they took care of 1 for Cisco and 1 for Catan. Now, if you'll notice, Catan is almost done. He just needs his vet care. Cisco's almost done too, but he needs 1 more worker to do an exercise hex. Okay, so round 1 is done. Let's move on to round 2. So they need a vet hex, they need another kennel, they need an exercise area as well. So players would talk to each other and decide. What they're going to do right now is to go ahead and get another kennel because they do have quite a few dogs up there and they need to be thinking about getting that taken care of. So the vet will go ahead and put all of her workers on admin, Remember, the second time you add a hex, you also have to spend $2. So we'll move that funding down. And they can add a kennel. Another one. Okay. The purple worker decides to use her workers to take that admin up to the 6-worker limit to add to that funding and daily care, which looks like it's getting a little low. So 2 for funding, 1 for daily care. The fundraiser decides to intake another animal. Now these are going to be priorities because they already have the stray markers. So she's going to go ahead and take in Daisy. And you just put their stray markers back if they have any. So now we have a kennel that can only have dogs. Make sure to put that pet progress marker there. And then what she's going to decide to do is she sees Spud out there, and Spuddy is a foster dog. So she's going to take him and foster him. That means she puts 1 on intake, takes Spud, puts him under her own card, rotated 90 degrees, and puts a worker on him. So this is just for animals who need a little extra care or who are too young. So there we go. That's the end of round 2. Now this meeple for Spud, who's fostering Spud, has to stay on him until he comes into the shelter. So again, what they do is they take back all of their workers again. We move the round marker up 1 and the funding and daily care down by 1. We're going to put a stray marker on the 2 animals left and go ahead and replenish the cards. We've got Nix and Jinx. And then we're going to grab an event card. And this event card says, an owner recognizes their lost pet. Remove one of the pets from the intake area and return it to the box. This does not count as a placement point. Okay, so the players have a choice. They can go ahead and take whichever animal that they want to go ahead and get them back to their owner. So Daisy looks like she's going to be requiring the most work. So let's get her back to her owner. There we go. And now we're ready to start the 3rd round. Let's just walk through placement just so you can see how that works too. So let's say that Cisco had his 1 additional exercise. So when all the dice match all the numbers here, then that means he's ready to be put in a home. So then you have to look up at the homes and see if there's anything that would be suitable. We have someone in an apartment who wants an older cat, and we have someone who wants a smaller pet. So it looks like a couple of the homes might be good for Cisco. Let's take this older man. And what you do is you just return the dice, take Cisco, flip him over to Happy Cisco, and we're going to put him over there and then move the placement marker up 1. Oh, that also, by the way, does require 1 worker on admin to do that. So that's the essence of the game. Basically, in a 3-player game, you're working to try to get 13 animals into homes over 10 rounds. And again, as a cooperative worker placement, you're working together. You're going to be performing certain actions to help the animals get into the shelter and then into homes successfully. Well, that's it. I hope this video showed you some of the basics of how to play the game Adopt Me. On behalf of Mockingbird Games and the entire Furry Bloom family, thanks for watching.